Yeah, yeah, it's my house. I like am into interior design and stuff, so I got like a little interesting
Obviously.
house.
Where are you based these days?
I'm based in Sherman Oaks. Yeah,
Okay.
you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm in New York. I'm about 2 hours north of the city in Hudson Valley,
Nice.
but I'm from San Francisco, and my family's from the Valley, so,
Mm.
I'm somewhat familiar with the area. How did you end up in Sherman Oaks specifically?
I was just house shopping one day and it brought me there. It had, you know, decent prices in a great neighborhood. I'm right off of Ventura, so I'm like, it's all walkable. It's just perfect. Yeah, I would live here the rest of my life, honestly.
Yeah, I like that. It's very pragmatic answer.
Yeah, yeah, fair,
You know?
fair.
Yeah, it's just nice. I just like it. Yeah, so, when did you get into interior design?
My first house, I got a house in on the East Coast in the DMV, and
Mm,
basically, when I got that house, I pretty much started doing some type of interior design work just because it was like fun to me. And then when I got this house about a year later, I kind of was like, all right, I can play around a little bit more. So I did a little more like decorating the trims, obviously painting, doing some of the like moldings, things like that. And that kind of ended up being like really cool. I think I actually had a conversation with Architectural Digest about my house. I have an interesting space that's centered around music, where basically each floor has a record player with records, and wherever you play it from, you can hear it throughout the house, even in the bathrooms, whatever, wherever. And then also from my studio, which is in my house, you can like when my engineer's mixing or doing a pre-mix, I can hear it when I'm taking a shower, and I can text them and be like, "Yo, turn the vocals down to dB." Like, you know what I mean? Like I can. It's just centered around music, so there's music everywhere you go.
that's more than, like, interior design, though. That's like I don't even know how to describe it. That's like some Pee Wee Herman, Pee Wee's
Yeah,
Playhouse
yeah.
stuff right there. That's impressive. Where that specifically, as far as actually being able to hear from floor to floor, where did that idea come from?
Um, that kind of came from the fact that I wanted to never have to leave my house to create. So, I like to send like there's a record store conveniently right behind my house. So I go to the record store, grab like a record based off of what it looks like most of the time. Sometimes with things, but mostly what it looks like. And then I take it and then I listen to it and I get inspired or I don't. And then that can lead to a sample, it could lead to an idea, it could lead to um just inspiration, all of those things. Like and that's kind of one aspect of my creative process, not the aspect, though, not the main one.
I mean, that's interesting, right? I mean, because obviously, there's a part of the creative process where, you do need to kind of leave, right? I mean, you do need to go out and engage with the world, but you've also kind of created this, I guess it sounds like this fortress for yourself where you can just kind of like lock yourself up and get away from everything
Yeah,
else.
yeah, exactly, exactly. So that is exactly how I look at it for sure.
Yeah, I'm wondering, like, if sort of living through like a global pandemic maybe plays a role in that too. I mean, in terms of like you as a musician trying to make art in that process and not being able to like I know you were teaching your class and coincidentally I'm looking at timeline that has I think that happened like February 2020, right? Like
Right,
right
right.
right as shit was really starting to hit the fan. That must have had a pretty profound impact on the way that you make music.
Kind of, but I had a personal pandemic, if for lack of better word, probably made me know how to do that even more, and that's just being behind bars. It's like COVID was a piece of cake, man. Like my whole world was for a very long time one building. that's my world. Like I can't go down the street to go, get a coffee or like a sandwich, This is my world in this one place. So when COVID happened, it was like, at least I can go to the grocery store. I mean, like yeah, no one was on the streets, but it was like, that's fine. I've been in worse situations. So I think learning how to use resources within a small confined space was something that I picked up probably earlier in my life.
I've heard you speak about that from the standpoint of making plans, which, I mean, that makes a lot of sense, right? You got nothing but time, right? You can sit there, you can kind of like map out, here's the things, if and when I get out of here, here's what I'm going to do. But as far as actually like day to day and sitting down and being creative and being able to actually make things, I mean, what resources were really available to you at the time?
Um, and you said in prison specifically. Um, so the resources I had was my beat machine, if you would say, was me walking out on the yard with my radio and memorizing whatever the hottest beats on the radio were down to the BPM and then write music to the memory of the beat. That was literally what it was because my radio didn't catch signal inside because the concrete, the walls were just too thick. So the only way I'd catch the radio is if I'm right by like the window area or I am literally in the yard.
Let's back up a little bit. What was your relationship with music and actually like making music like before you went in?
I mean, I was a part of a go-go band, which is music native to DC area, yeah. And we were just having fun, barely had any real shows. We did maybe one or two or something like that. A lot of practices though. And that was really fun. And I loved music based off of that. All I knew was really go-go. I didn't really know like I mean, I knew about rap, but I wasn't into it, like as much as I was go-go. And then when I was, it was like more like Gucci Mane and Yo Gotti and people of that nature around that time specifically. Of course, like if a Kanye would drop or somebody like that. Jay-Z, not so much when I was younger. I got into him a little older. But all of those things basically, that was pretty much what kind of shaped me musically in terms of what I was into and listening to prior to that. Oh,
Go-go's like funk. It's like really like high energy
yeah,
funk
it can
kind of,
it can
right?
be that way, but there's other formats that were a lot actually a little more modern formats, but funk is the base of it for sure. But also something very important to add in there is prior to getting locked up, I had just started getting into more of what people would have called backpack rap, right? So like Kendrick Lamar's Section 80, I'd just gotten into that about it. It was like a year after it come out, but I got into that, and then some J. Cole, like like literally like what's the Cole World, the Sideline Story, I think was the first album. I'd just gotten into that, so that was like the first kind of taste of, I'd say, intellectual rap. And then I got locked up, so now I'm like, that's the last thing on my mind. And then I'm trying to figure out how to make music based off of that idea of what rap music is.
Yeah, that's interesting. They see you kind of being pulled in two directions with like Gucci Mane, right? Like, obviously, he's been
Yeah,
through it
right.
a lot. But then intellectualizing. I mean, it does sound like Kendrick, J. Cole is a good place to start as far as, I don't know, having a way to process what you're going through and putting pen to paper.
Exactly. And I think that juxtaposition lives in my music till this day. There's this element of street that comes from parts of me, but then there's that understanding of certain levels of intellect, and I mean that within the in the form of rap music, not necessarily that one is smarter than the other, but one is a lot more intentional about coming off that way than the other. And understanding how to balance those is like kind of how you get even the devil smiles. It's like that's that's basically what that is. You know, in a lot of ways.
What does it mean, and is it important for you to come off as intellectual?
No, I don't think it's well. What it means is taking the time to think of how to make a line a little more clever than just a surface level rhyme, which is something that honestly I think I have a lot of trouble with people really understanding about me. I'll say a line that means like four different things or bend the word a little bit to kind of make it mean four different things. And I don't know that people look at me for that. I think they see the surface level and think, all right, it's cool or it's not cool. But I think if people understood that I think a little deeper about things like a Cole or a Kendrick might, then they'd probably be able to see the true beauty in what I do, and I take the time to do. But yeah, I think that is literally kind of like my idea of it. It's just the intentionality of trying to want to outdo yourself. I don't think it's to make anyone else. That's why I'm fine with it, to be honest, ultimately. 'Cause, like, I know what I did. You know what I'm saying? Like, a couple people will catch what I did, and if you like the song, you like the song, so that's fine. You know what I mean?
I think there's something like kind of nice and powerful about that too. If you feel like you got this like little
Yeah.
secret,
Yeah.
you know,
Right.
where everyone's like, "Oh yeah, that was great," but you're like, "Yeah, we got this little thing that like that we understood," or maybe like I got that over on people that they didn't quite get, or maybe it's that kind of that there's an appreciation in like because I know for me like the songs, I mean, just like art in general that I really like are the ones that like I have come back to at different points in my life, and I've just completely rediscovered
Mhm.
and have meant completely different things to
Mhm.
me. And I think that that's what powerful work does.
Yeah. I think MF Doom has a good way of kind of making you
Mhm.
think that it's like, "Wait, what's going on? He's not even really on beat. Like, why people like
Yeah,
do
yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
really pay attention to his flow patterns, to what he's saying, to the depth of the what he's saying, the meanings of what he's saying?" Um, it's then you realize it's kind of an acquired taste, and you understand it once you acquire it, how great it really is. I think in a lot of ways I'm like that. And I think the people who are closest to my art and understand it and love it the most are the ones that get it the most. However, not to say that people who don't get it aren't smart or anything like that. They're just not looking for it. It's very few artists that you feel like you need to look for it for. Like some people, you look for it more than it actually is actually there. I think you see it sometimes with Kendrick Lamar's work. It's like they might bend it a little bit too much, like more than he might have intended for it to be. Maybe. I don't know because I haven't asked him about every line he's made in his life. You know what I mean? So
We get what? We get one Kendrick Lamar per generation, right? I mean, we get one person who gets to like be at that level, but also gets to perform Super Bowl
yeah,
halftime. you
yeah,
know, I mean, I mean, obviously, it'd be nice to, but I've gone through this myself where it's like, oh yeah, why aren't more? I'm putting with whether it's like the podcast or writing anything else. I'm like, oh, I'm putting this thing out. Like, why aren't more people appreciate it? And it's like, oh well, everything that I've really liked in my life has been like an acquired taste or like a cult thing. So it just sort of tracks that like people who like the thing that I like maybe you know, maybe it's not as accessible, maybe it is something that takes a little bit of getting used to, but that's not I mean, I don't know, that's not necessarily a bad thing in and of
yeah.
itself.
No, and exactly. That's kind of how I see this whole thing, and I think there's a lot of beauty in it all. Once you realize, man, all of this stuff is just based off of what you like. I will say, people say music is subjective, and And it is, but that's a like there's nuance to that. I think music is more objective than people think,
Mm,
especially in specific lanes. And what I mean by that is if you go like to the top 40 radio, at the end of the day, not that it's a great metric to judge things by, but a lot of what people are listening to has a certain level of songwriting. Now, maybe it's not your cup of tea, maybe you don't love it, but there's a certain level of songwriting that's intentional. The mix and the master. Yeah, it's something, and I think that anybody who at least I like, or anybody who most people usually tend to like, there's a certain level they're at least at before you know, before people dismiss it or choose to accept it. And I think that's very evident in certain things. Now, there's those moments where it goes viral on TikTok and it has a moment that's not based around the music, but you see that quickly fall off as well. I think music is a lot more objective than people like to give it credit for.
I wanted to get back to this something you were talking about before about sort of the transistor radio and about only being able to, you know, hear the music and interact with the music out in the yard or when you're by a window. And I think about this a lot now. Um, I think about this a lot now in terms of like, Spotify or, like our access to music now versus even like physical records. You're talking about going out, like walking across the street, grabbing, an LP or something. Right now, it's this embarrassment of riches. We have like unlimited access to everything. We tend to take things for
Right.
granted. And, maybe as horrible and, obviously nobody wants to be in that situation, but I don't know, maybe that they're in a kind of weird, perverse way, maybe there is kind of a power in having had that be such in not taking the music that you got for granted and really having to sort of have it be a precious thing and to really kind of like to dissect it and to pay attention to it in a way that you wouldn't have otherwise.
Um, yes. You're talking about being behind bars and listening to it, right?
Yeah, yeah, about having to memorize the music and versus like, if you heard it on the radio, you hear it 10 more times, you wouldn't really think all
Right.
that much
Yeah.
about it.
It's interesting because I'm trying to tap back into that memory of how I did it. I would hear it and I would just remember like this was when I Don't Like first came out, like the remix. This was when Mercy was a thing. Uh, this was around Cruel Summer, like literally that was the
Mm,
summer I
mhm.
remember the most. Um, yeah, I would just I think I always had this ability to memorize music. Even as a kid, I just didn't realize how important that was gonna be in my life later. So I think that was like
Yeah.
inherent in a way, in a sense. But like when it was time to remember a beat that I liked, it wasn't hard at all. It didn't feel like I had to overanalyze it. It was just there. Seriously, it was just literally, I heard it, I remembered it, and I put it together. I remember, if you look, there's somewhere on the internet, I did a remix to the song Refill by, I forgot her name, I don't remember her full name, but she had a song called Refills on the radio. And I memorized that beat fairly easily and I wrote a rap to it. So when I got out, I recorded it and put it out, you know? It wasn't too difficult for me to remember. It was like second nature almost.
That was just in your head
Yeah.
until you got
Mhm.
out?
No, I wrote it, but the beat was that.
Just had a notebook going the entire
Yeah,
time
I
that you
still
were.
have it. It's upstairs.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So you were, so you were it sounds like you were kinda plotting and planning and putting the notebook together and what was, obviously, I mean, at a certain point, it sounds like you weren't quite sure when you were gonna get out. I know that the 15 years was floated, and I know that, like, I'm sure that last year, whenever that anniversary would have been in 2025, really kind of hit home. um, but but what was the game plan? I mean, did you have an idea like, okay, day one, I'm out. Like, how do I get the ball rolling
I
on
went
this
to the
thing?
studio day one. Straight to the
Really,
fucking went
that
home,
easy?
took a shower,
Yeah.
maybe got something to eat, and went straight to the fucking studio. And my goal was to make a mixtape. That's all I wanted to do. It's like I gotta make a mixtape. Yeah. But my plan A was never music. My plan A was going to school, getting education, trying to like figure out how to become a registered nurse or like get into IT or something like that. And
Obviously, like, especially being an RN, that's a valiant goal in life. What happens there?
when I get out or when
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like, an RN. I mean, that's something something
yeah.
you could have pursued if.
Okay. So when I got out,
I guess what I'm asking is like, people. It's less. People usually don't just fall into being a successful recording
oh,
artist.
my heart,
Maybe that's a
man, my
good way to
heart was
put it.
here. This is where my heart was.
Yeah.
I felt a level of fulfillment when I would make something. I remember when I did my first freestyle that I ever released. It was to the beat, the click beat. Ain't nobody fucking with my click, click, click. That song. Big Sean, Kanye, and somebody else. But I remember that shit, and I just kind of like rapped over the beat, freestyled the whole way through, and then I just hit everybody on Facebook that was online. I was like, "Hey, what's up?" And they're like, "Yo, what's up?" And then I was like, "Yo, I got this song. I just rapped. I just want to know what you think. What's your feedback?" And I asked like mad people, and I remember doing that all day long. And then the next day, this was when YouTube used to update like every 24 hours, so it wasn't like in real time like it is now. And I remember going on YouTube the next day and it had like 1,200 views. And I was, oh
Hmm,
shit, like that
I made
people
it.
listen to my shit, bro. Like it was that, and that what fueled me to keep going and going. I'm like, I might be all right at this. And that took me out of the being an RN quickly. I was just like, all right. And then it became this thing of, okay, I got to shoot a music video now. But this video's $500. I'm like, shit, I gotta get $500. So I figured out how to get $500. Shot that video. The video did 50,000 views. And then I was like, okay, I'm at 50,000 views. Let me keep going. And then I just led to the next thing and next thing. And I was spending more money than I was making at first for sure.
How'd you get $500?
Well, that particular way was, I used to sell sneakers and shit, and I just was like, let me sell the rest of my inventory and get out of the sneak and get into the music game. I had to make that decision that at that moment. It's like I'm willing to, because these guys who were shooting video, they had stuff that had been on MTV already, and they were the guys in the DMV at that time. First Impression Studios, yeah, shout out to them.
Yeah, I mean, at that point too, it's sort of like, and I think everybody gets to this point, at a certain point where it's like, all right, this is the shot right here. Like, I either try this now and regret it, or
Hmm.
I don't. Yeah, I could make, I could probably could have lived a perfectly happy life, being an RN or being in IT, but like, you're gonna regret at least not going for it at this
Damn, it
point.
just was. I don't see having a perfect life that way. To me, not for me. Not because anyone can have that job and be perfectly fine. I had this burning desire to create, and it was evident since going to prison and getting out of prison, being in prison. It was very clear, and I've had it since I was a kid, but it started to get more and more prominent as I got older.
There's something to being, again, like, especially having gone through this, like, this big pandemic. There's something in being an RN, and being like being actually like personally like impacting people, like, bringing some good into the world. Is that something that you feel like you're able to do through? I mean, obviously, like education. You've done some teaching as well. Is that something that you can also impart through music?
What specifically? Sorry.
Just as far as, I mean, we need nurses, you know,
Yeah,
like, I mean, it's a good, you know, it's a job where you're sort of out there and you're like positively impacting people's lives. You know, is there an element of that in art or in your music or in the way that you're sort of out there interacting with people?
100%. It's like it's in my DNA. Even the name, ignorantly delivering knowledge. Like my goal has always been to deliver knowledge. I think that that's where the confusion actually starts to come in, where people may look at me surface level artist, because my whole thing was always ignorantly delivering knowledge, because that's the only way people care or listen. At least the people that I wanted to reach. Like there are people who, may not need the knowledge as much, that can get it if it's just knowledge. But I think there's a lot of people who need to be kind of guided in through ignorance. At least that's what I was thinking at the time when I made the songs and everything. Now it's a little more advanced in the way that I see it. But at that time, I was like, all right, I'm gonna make this song called Two Hoes. And then songs literally, I got two hoes and another hoe and another hoe that's COVID. And it was like my first song to ever get to 1 million streams, by the way. But the irony of it, right? And then, but then when you listen to the record, like the project, it's way deeper than two. Like you wouldn't almost believe that the guy that made Two Hoes made this whole project. And that was always my thing. But I realized later on in life, some people don't get past the surface. So then they kind of just look at it for what it is and what they saw it as. And then when I do like a freestyle, they're like, what? I didn't know he rapped like that, you know?
I hadn't quite picked that up until you said that. As far as the name and as far as the ignorantly delivering part, what you're saying is that's kind of like that's kind of the way in.
Yeah.
That's the way of getting in front of people, right? I
Yeah,
mean, you know, you're getting a song in front of people, and then you're dropping
yeah, it's
knowledge
kinda like
once they're it's actually
it's
okay.
like, "Yo, yeah, alright, boom." Now this whole, like, spreadsheet of, like, what you really should be paying attention to. I've got your attention, and I think that, so they'll have, like, songs that are, like, commercially successful, and it'll be like 24, for instance, like, "Run it back, run it back, run it back," and then you'll go and listen to Is He Real, and you'll realize 24 is based off of, uh, um, uh the number 24 from Marshawn Lynch, and then Marshawn Lynch shares the same last name as my mother, and my the whole record ends with how my mother passed away, and then that ends with me letting you know that I was wrestling with the idea of God being real or not, based and what my mom passing away helped me realize, at least because I wanted to know that I'd see her again one day. And it kind of forced me to look at the prospect of God being real a little deeper than I did before, which led me to put two and two together and realize, man, I can't say that maybe there isn't a God, right? But I can't say there isn't a God for sure, because we don't know at the very least. That comes from a song that was about, sound like a football song. You come in, that's one of the biggest streaming records I think it's the biggest streaming record on that project. And then you go into this product that's a lot more profound than what you thought it was to begin with. So, that was what I was kind of saying. It's a very, I don't think anyone does what I do. And I think it's a new thing that people don't even know to look for. So, my fans who really, really pay attention to me, they look for that. But the people who don't, they just like, all right, did I like this or did I not? And then, all right, let me go on album of the year and rank this album, after my first listen.
I talked to a lot of people about this idea. I don't know how familiar you are with it, but you know, you ever talk to people about imposter syndrome? That idea of like, where you sort of like get put in position. You're like, I don't know if I like really like if I belong here. That kind of thing. And I'm wondering, like, if obviously it like worked out, but initially put in a position where you're suddenly like, all right, I'm lecturing in front of a class in Harvard. Was that difficult at first? Did you feel like initially, like, did it take you time to really feel like, you you could do that, and like it made sense for you to be there, and like you had something really to sort of say or impart.
No, it started with me believing that I could be there. It was like I would be sending my publicist at the time, Nick Darrow, and Warner Records a big email like, "Hey, I think I could teach at an Ivy League school, and here's why." And I think it's important for me to do that coming out of prison because there's people who are just like me that can be this way, but they just don't have the example or the motivation. And I think I can do that. I can be that for a lot of people. And no one responded originally. And I felt like, oh, you guys don't think I'm serious. So then I
So you're like, I feel this way. Maybe nobody else quite has figured this out
back
yet.
in, and then Nick set up this thing where he was like, I know a speaker series, and we could start there. And that turned into No Label Academy, which is the class that we ended up doing. So I say all that to say I knew that from the jump. Otherwise, it wasn't like Harvard reached out to me initially, like, hey, do this thing. It was like, no, I think this thing can happen.
What did you feel like you had to impart? You know what that they wouldn't be getting otherwise.
I think it's funny because we had this conversation with a professor. It might have been a couple professors, and we were all talking, and then one of them goes, um, I believe the problem in the Black community stems from the environment. A lot of the problems that are in the Black community, and I never thought about this question ever. I just kind of stopped her right away and just off instinct. And I was like, I don't agree with that. And she, she's not from that community also, but I was like, I don't agree with that. The biggest solution has nothing to do with the environment. It has to do with mentality and education, re-educating people to see things differently. Because if you're talking about environment, then gentrification, uh, which I was affected by negatively in the sense of, you know, where I'm from, Prince George's County, if you don't go to a private school, you're not going to a good school anyway. So, and a lot of what happened was they gentrified GC, so a lot of people moved to Prince George's County, but the mentality didn't necessarily change. So now seeing neighborhoods where there's houses across the street that have that are $300,000, and then the houses next to it is Section 8, and people are getting killed in the $300,000 neighborhood. These are the things that come from thinking environment is what needs to change. Mentality needs to change, and with mentality then comes environment. So I say that to say I was prepared. You know what I mean? I never went to school for none of this stuff. It's just all here. I can see it.
I asked partially because, like, you have two, you come from an immigrant family, a very smart, really smart parents, right? I mean, they both went to college, and um, and obviously, like, you're very intelligent too. Something was it just that was it the school situation? You feel like that kind of got you caught up
Yeah.
in
But
that? That's where things kind of went wrong
very
initially.
much so. Once I started going to schools where we're mixing and mingling with people who, come from different backgrounds than I did, that's when that whole fight for, attention and ultimately what I believed to be love was. I was just going like I was doing shit, like I was doing things that were not great. you know?
I was listening to, like, I don't know, I think it was an interview you were doing, and it was really, like, it really struck me because, you know, I think, like, effectively, like you said, you weren't your grades weren't that great, and so there was a love that you might have been getting from your parents that you weren't because your grades weren't there, so you kinda ended up looking for that
Yeah,
elsewhere.
yeah. And I thought I was getting it elsewhere when I was doing things that I probably shouldn't be doing. Well, not probably, I definitely shouldn't have been doing.
It sounds like figured out pretty quickly, though, once the shit hit the fan, that you needed to do something
Yeah,
different.
for sure. And I figured it out the best I could, but even with that, I still went back to prison uh 2 more times. So I'd seen that I'd gone in, got out, gone in again on a violation, got out because I got a bail, and then gone in again when I got resentenced, pretty much. And essentially, that is a very interesting thing because I never got in trouble again. It just simply off of the fact that I'd already been there and I got in off of technicalities, which is crazy because I'm like in school. I'm like trying to, go to school. I got a job. I'm working at like Best Buy and a barber shop and I still went back, you know?
And I feel like that's probably like, if you're going to impart knowledge on people, that would be an important thing is like how to avoid this. But like, you can't just say, hey, just don't get caught up in this shit in the first place. Like that's
Yeah. That's
right.
that's a very short-sighted way of looking at it. It's kind of like I'm not giving my money to a homeless guy. He should get a job. It's like, bro, maybe he had a job. Maybe he got laid off. Maybe he didn't have the opportunity to go to school because his mom passed away and he had to take care of his brothers and sisters at an early age and work certain jobs. So he didn't get. It's like the idea, and I think it's just an excuse to have a lack of compassion. That's really all. Because I don't think people are that dumb. I think they're smart.
But also, it's like you're a teenager and you fucked up, and like teenagers fuck up all the time. They just don't face that consequence all the time. So I guess like partially, what I'm getting at too is like, now that you've lived through this and like thank God you made it through the other side and you're trying to sort of, impart the wisdom that you can, like what as kids are listening to you and if they find themselves in similar positions, like what kind of advice do you feel like you can give to them?
The best advice I think is it's not over. You have so many other ways to bounce back. It feels like it's over, but it's not over. And that's the one thing I was able to do, because I could see like some of the people that were in with me. They believed life was over. They were just gonna just do the same things again anyway, because they didn't have any idea of what could be different. I always had weird only child imagination thing where I would always be able to imagine things. And when I got older, I learned how to turn my imagination into actual or things that actually happen, and it became vision. Um, but I know very few people that have what I have in that ability and have that ability. So what I would give that advice, advice I'd give is understanding that ability and honing into that because it's not over once you're in a situation like that.
Who's D'Angelo Sneed?
D'Angelo is someone that I met when I was in prison, a friend of mine. He happened to be a high-ranking blood gang member, but he is so important to this story because, man, he was in there for murder. And it happened when he was young, like 19 or 18. He'd been there for 8 years, I think, before I got in there, and then he ended up serving 22 years behind bars. He's actually recently been not convicted, been obtained again and back detained again, for being in the wrong environment, not because he did anything necessarily. And he's gonna get out eventually, but he has to go through trial and all this stuff and get.
He's like a security guard, so right? He's just like wrong place, wrong
Yeah,
time or
man. It's
something.
like it's ridiculous. But he is basically the person that told me to take rap seriously. He was the person that let me borrow his Chronic CD and a CD player and watch the Throne. And I got to listen to these songs and read the back of the booklet and know who No ID is and all these different people. Like, so he's a big.
He was like, so you were the only child, and he was like your older
Yeah,
brother.
yeah,
He's like,
yeah, yeah, basically the older brother I never had. And he kinda he helped, like, me stay out of trouble in prison too. I never had to join a gang because because of him. Like he wouldn't want that. He saw potential in me, and he was just like, and I'm not, I hopefully wouldn't have ever had to join a gang, but it's very rare that you're that young in a system like that, and you're not a part of an organization, and you have a good time there. It's like you're basically what they call a civilian, and the only people who do well as civilians are what we call OTs, old timers, people that they're just older. So it's like, yeah, leave him alone. He's an old dude. He's minding his business. But young people like 19, 20, I don't know. That's not that's rare.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good lesson there is to just um, obviously like take the lessons where you can, and listen to the people who are obviously wise. I mean, what did he in that time? And it sounds like he played a really big role in kind of helping you one, just survive, but two, turn things around. I mean, what day to day as far as kind of keeping you focused and helping you get through that period. What kind of wisdom did he impart on you?
Man, he basically helped me learn how to just make time go by as fast as possible. He like showed me like all the like little resources, like things like obviously listening to music. He let me cut his hair, so I had a probably shouldn't say this. Well, it doesn't matter now, anything. But I had a blade and a comb. And I would cut people's hair with the comb and like shape them up. And I learned how to do that when I went to Sierra Leone. So I was like, all right, bet I can cut people's hair like this. Um, what else? Man, I can't believe I was doing that. That's like wild when I think. I was like I lived that life. That was my life, like, at one point. But yeah, so I would make like a couple dollars here and there, $2 a haircut, you know what I mean? Stuff like that. And then most importantly, he was like my eyes and ears to the things that I needed to stay away from, for sure.
Death before dishonor, tell a nigga calm down. I'm trying to get it for his crown. Dreamt about the shit when I was back on lockdown. I learned my shit inside the pound. I'm a dog. Headshot with the dog. Red